it is that simple. And it's also so complex, isn't it? The Dharma, it's so vast. Maybe not complex, maybe that's the wrong word, although sometimes it does feel very complex, these teachings, but also just vast. Yeah, so simple, the wing of wisdom or insight, and the wing of cultivation. And so often we hear the wing of wisdom and compassion. And a lot in the Tibetan tradition, they'll say the Dharma is like two wings of a great bird, the wing of wisdom and compassion. But I think it's deeper than that. Maybe we could say that compassion encompasses all other kinds of cultivation. But really, I would like to hold it as the two wings of this great bird of the Dharma being the wing of insight, wisdom that comes through investigation. It's a style of practicing, investigating, seeing what is really happening right now. What really is the nature of this thing we call life? What is the truth of this thing that we call the self? How is it that we suffer? How is it that we find freedom from suffering? That would all be the wing of insight, wisdom, investigation. And then there's this wing of cultivation, of like we did with singing today, like we did with the metta practice, like we did with moving with Jim, cultivating, inviting in these beautiful, nourishing qualities of the heart, the mind, and the body to help support the investigation, the wisdom. And then, you know, these wings, they flap together. Well, I don't think birds flap like this. Kayaks do that. Yeah, so that's another, you know, image. Sometimes we dip the paddle in wisdom, and then we need some of the cultivation, and that supports deepening in wisdom, which will support the more we're coming from wisdom, wise view. We will then act out of love, compassion, joy. So there, I like that image right now, paddling. So I want to talk a little bit about that. That is the title of this talk. And then, like we've heard Dan say, and like I was mentioning early, as a Sangha, we're holding this theme, remembrance and renewal. So potentially, we'll see if we can weave that theme in here also a little. So this week, as I was thinking about this theme, images come to me a lot, like the kayaking image just came to me, and this probably happens to you, yeah? Images pop into the mind, yeah? Some of us more than others, but the mind does that. And so the image that came as I was thinking of the wings of awakening was the image of a great bird. But I kept seeing it. I kept like seeing this great bird flying in my mind's eye. And it kept happening. And then I had this memory. I remembered. And so this is where I'd like to invite in a little bit of remembrance. I remembered the time. It wasn't this time last year for me, but it was around February when some of the board asked would I come in and meet with them and talk about all that had happened last year with KB and Robert and all that had unfolded in the Sangha, and would I potentially come and give a talk. And so I was remembering that time, and what I was remembering was at that time last year when I was, or I guess it was still this year, but kind of feeling this full circle energy, I thought, oh, okay, I think I want to get a feeling for this Sangha. Somehow, I want to feel, I'd never before been into this space. And so I thought, Ruth Dennison, she's and if you don't know her, this woman that you'll see the picture of all around this place, this is Ruth Dennison. She's this Dharma master goddess, and she is why we are all here. She is the lineage in which we are sitting in right now. So whether you know that or not, we are here in this Sangha, in this space, together here because of Ruth and because of her, the way that she brought the Dharma to the West and made this space happen for all of us. So I thought, so I had a couple of memories. And well, so I thought, I'm going to go check out Ruth Denison. I'm going to see if I can listen to some talks or find something. And I remembered that, I had so many memories at that moment of just different teachers in my course of practice talking about her and her teachings, although I had never met her myself. And then I had a memory of being in this little, it's called the Little Gratitude Hut at Spirit Rock. Have any of you been there and seen that? Yeah, it's this little kuti, and there are photographs of all of the masters in the Theravadan tradition, just photographs of them all around. And whenever I'd done retreat at Spirit Rock, I would go in there and just have real devotional experiences in that little kuti, looking at and I would always land on Ruth's picture and her outfit, her beautiful outfits, and like, who is that? Darn, I wish I could have, and this was like maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago when I had that experience with her photograph, and then also just hearing other teachers talk about her and her style. So last year, I found a video, and some of you may have seen it. It's a documentary of Ruth Denison, her life. It's like, I don't know, maybe just an hour. Made in the 90s, old school kind of footage style, and it tracks her teaching. It shows her teaching on retreat. There's a lot of really beautiful scenes of her and the way that she taught. And then there was this, and this might just be powerful for me, and it was powerful for me, and I don't know why I'm sharing it in this space, maybe because of the bird, but I just am sharing this. It was a really interesting moment for me. There was a scene in the movie where it was just an eagle flying, but for a really long time, like a longer shot than one ever looks at in a documentary. And at first I was like, okay, that's weird. Maybe that's just how they did it back then. Like they didn't know how to make things this fast in a documentary. Because it was really, really long scene of this, just the eagle flying. And then I was watching this eagle. I was like, well, there must be some significance about that. I wonder if Ruth loved eagles or something. And I just remember pondering that for what could the meaning of the eagle be? So if any of you who know Ruth know if there was meaning, see me after, because I still. But anyway, what was, we could say it was the wings of the Dharma if we want, maybe that, who knows? But what was really interesting for me, this is the part I didn't know that I would share. It might sound really woo-woo to you, but I live near the big river in Milwaukee, the Willamette. And I often walk by the river, and I just started seeing eagles flying every day. And at that time, I was scared to come teach in this hall in light of all that had happened. It felt scary. And somehow, I would see an eagle every day, and somehow I was like, maybe it's Ruth. Maybe it's Ruth. So I'm making that up. I don't know if it was, but I'm giving that meaning. I'll say I'm not making it up. And it felt meaningful for me at the time to see these eagles every day. I don't see the eagles anymore, but at that time I was seeing them. And I walked in to that little room back there the other day, and there on a bench is a book called The Birds of Prey with an eagle on the cover. And I thought, is Ruth here with us? And is there some significance about eagles for Ruth? So all of that is not really a Dharma story, but just my own kind of, just how I connect with the natural world and magic, and feeling a sense of meaningfulness and sacredness, just living in this world of beings and spirit. But anyway, what I really want to share is watching that video. Let's say the eagle was a representation of the two wings of the Dharma. Why not? Let's say that's what it was in the movie. just to bring in Ruth Denison right now and honor her and remember her, because as I was watching the way she was teaching, she was just such an embodiment of these two wings, and in a particular kind of way. Like, there's one scene where Ruth in this movie is driving somewhere with someone, and she's in the passenger seat. And as this person's driving, she's like, and now you turn left, and you're aware of your arm moving, and you're aware of the thoughts, and now you're aware of seeing. And that scene struck me. And later, when I was talking to Doug Pullen, who was one of the students of Ruth, I said, so is that just how she was? Like, did she just always invite people to be aware every moment? That's like the piece of investigation, just clarity. And he said, yep. That was how she was, just always. You'll see that if you watch the movie. It was just always an investigation to be aware. What's happening in the body? What's happening right now? What's happening in the mind? And then you'll also see that she just had groups of people singing to the rock formations in the desert. And there's a scene in that movie where it looked like it was walking meditation time, and they were just like dancing, and now we're being aware of the arm going up and down. And she kind of talked like that in the singing, and this is the cultivation of joy. And she just seemed to be such an embodiment of that, like this very precise, clear mindfulness, that piece of insight, that wisdom, that cultivation, and done with this warm, joyful, resourcing with a well of fun. It looked fun to practice with her. There's this one scene, if we should all watch the movie together sometime. And she has a group walking in the desert where her center was, and they're talking maybe about walking meditation, they're talking about dharma, and then she just does stop and sing. Really, they all sing to the rocks. And then there's one scene where they bring her a birthday cake and they're all singing happy birthday, and then she changes all the lyrics to a dharma song to the tune of happy birthday. And it was like, that's how it can be. That's how it can be. We can take our practice so dang serious. We gotta get freedom. We gotta see, how am I suffering? What am I adding to it? Maybe you're not that way, but I definitely can be that way. What's happening? And I wanna see, and I wanna get free, and I can forget that we also get to have fun and cultivate joy and cultivate love and generosity and ethics and kindness and patience, and there's a whole list of beautiful qualities that we can cultivate. So thank you, Ruth. And actually, let's have a moment of remembrance for Ruth and for all these beautiful wisdom teachers who have made it their life's work to pass these teachings down so we can receive them. Isn't that amazing how they find some way to keep teaching us? It's amazing. So there's a quote that Christina Feldman, an insight teacher, she quotes one of her teachers. I'm not sure which teacher it is that she's quoting, but there's this little pith teaching or poem. Know the mind, shape the mind, free the mind. So knowing the mind is pointing to the opening of wisdom, knowing what's happening in there. What's going on in there that's causing suffering, stress? What's going on in there that's leading to the ending of stress, to opening, to awakening? What's going on in that mind? What's happening in life? How is it really? And the shaping of the mind is this inviting in, this cultivating joy, metta, compassion, insight, or samadhi. So insight, knowing the mind, and one of my teachers, Robert Bea, we could call insight any way of seeing that lessens suffering. So insight, any way of seeing that lessens suffering. And so I love that because we can have personal insights. Like a personal insight might be something like, aha, I noticed that when I have Facebook and Instagram on my phone, I can't stop looking. I just can't. That's an insight. It doesn't feel good. That's a personal insight. That's true for me, and it may or may not be true for you. But that's a personal insight, and that insight lessens suffering. So we could fill this room with personal insights. When I go to bed earlier, I feel better when I wake up in the morning. Lessens suffering, personal insight. We have so many of these, and these personal insights can open to the more ultimate insights. And these more ultimate insights, or maybe more, we could say maybe universal insights, are pointing to, and when we hear insight in the phrase insight meditation, this is what we're kind of pointing to, the insight into understanding the impermanent nature of everything, self, other, world. The insight into the emptiness of the self, or understanding what is this thing we call self, what is it really, what's going on with it. And then the insight into understanding what causes suffering, craving, clinging, and what lessens it. So those are the classical 3 insights, also known as the insights into the 3 characteristics of existence. So whatever kind of insight we're having, all good, it's all great. Let's have all the insights, personal, maybe universal or collective. And they're called also the 3 truths because probably none of us would debate them. Or maybe you would debate them. Let's debate them. And definitely there is a place for debating. Does craving really lead to suffering? And the Buddha did ask us to please check that out for yourself. See, anything I say, check it out for yourself. So that stands here too. But most of us wouldn't debate the impermanence one. And the impermanence insight is actually at the core of these other 2 insights. I won't spend too much time going into that right now. Or maybe we could, actually looking at time, maybe we could. So how does insight play into understanding the emptiness of self? So we could really spend a lot of time going into this, and we will, for those of you who want to take this class. But just to say, we can think of our mind, who I am right now, is so solid, but it's really changing moment to moment based on every different condition of the senses, the mind and the heart. Each new moment, a new self being born, passing away. How many different selves were you this morning? Were you the tired self? Were you the hungry self? Were you the excited self? Spiritual self? The joyful self? So many. Each new mind state is a new self. Well, let's leave it there for now. And how does impermanence, the change, how is that the undercurrent of dukkha, or the cause of suffering, being craving? When we're looking for happiness in the sensual world, and this means like this, all the senses, and in Buddhism, the mind and the heart is a sense. If we're looking for a lasting form of happiness, like if I get this relationship, then I'll be happy. If I keep this job and do a good job at this job, then I'll be happy. We're just going to become really stressed out because these conditions will change. Everything conditioned will change. And so while we can have a lot of joy singing to one another and getting new earrings and whatever, all the things, so many beautiful sensual things in the world bring us joy, they can't bring this lasting happiness. So they're all tinged with this unsatisfactoriness because they'll change. The earrings will break. The song will end. You get it. And so shaping the mind, inviting in, cultivating, it's like this metaphor of the garden. We're planting seeds. We might do a metta practice and nothing might happen. We might feel nothing. But just the intention to want to have metta is like just planting a seed. We might want to have samadhi. We want the mind to gather and relax and be at ease, and it may or may not do it. But with just the intention to want that and to try it out, planting seeds, cultivating. So if you just thinking of that image of a bird with two wings, it can't get off the ground just flapping one wing. And different teachers will really emphasize different ones of these wings, and that's okay. But just to remember that we do need two wings, and that can look so many different ways for each of us. And there's no perfect prescription of how to balance cultivation and investigation. It's just it's an art, the art of meditation, the art of living. It's an artistic process. What do I need right now? And so I was thinking, and I've heard, this week a lot, and I noticed myself asking myself this question too this week: why are none of my practices working? I'm trying everything, nothing's working. Why do I not feel good right now? And when this question arises, it's like there can be times when we really feel like we're using all the tools, right? But it's not helping. Something's not helping. This can be a sign that that these two wings are off balance in some way. And I had another memory. This isn't a remembrance memory, but just a memory of this summer when I went paddle. We were on a camping trip, and unbeknownst to me, my kid and my mom were putting like a little kayak seat on the paddleboard and sat on it on the ground while they were doing it and didn't tell me. And so I was out paddling, and all of a sudden, I think I got a little ways out. Everything was working okay, but then all of a sudden I put the paddle in, and I just started going in a circle. And then this feels weird. So go to the other side, circle, and it was a very unnerving feeling of I'm doing what I think I should be doing, but I don't know what's happening right now. And it was scary. It was and I thought, I wonder if the fin fell off, the fin that's the rudder for the paddleboard. So I kind of somehow got under there, and sure enough, it had broken off. And that's just that's the image. Without that rudder, without the balance, I'm doing everything right. This is where I'm supposed to put my paddle, but I'm just spinning around in circles. And so I was thinking about some examples for this, and in real life, like even a moment of mindfulness. We look at a moment of mindfulness that could really liberate from a challenging mind state. A moment of mindfulness has these two qualities. It has the quality of investigation, or the quality of clearly seeing what's happening, and for it to be really liberatory, it also has the quality of allowing, of not trying to change, not trying to push away, not trying to fix. It's really okay that this is here, and it's really okay that I don't like it, and of course I don't like it, but I don't have to change it. And this is what it feels like in the body, and this is what's happening in the mind, these are the thoughts. That's like a whole moment of mindfulness, that's really liberating. All of that is going on. And so it's a great place to check when we have the feeling why I feel like I'm really aware, I feel like I'm really mindful, I feel like I'm really compassionate. Why is nothing helping? And so to take the example of a moment of anxiety, sometimes maybe you have this experience, you feel gosh, I know I can recognize, I can name that there's anxiety, I can feel what's happening in my body, I know that it's unpleasant. Why do I feel no sense of relief? I'm being mindful. But what could be missing is I'm doing all of that to get rid of this. It shouldn't actually be here. So, right, that quality of metta, of loving, allowing, of seeing also the pushing away, not allowing, it's just recognizing surface level things, but it's not surface level. Those are really deep things, to know what the mind is doing and know what the body's doing, but it's missing the way that we're relating to it. It's missing that true sense of allowing. And allowing does sound like, of course I don't like this. Of course I want this to go away. And it's what's here. And it's what's here. And this is what it feels like. And just staying with. And in that allowing, the push and pull tends to go away. And that's where the relief comes. And so, on the other hand, someone might have a moment of anxiety, and this was a friend sharing this with me, and she was saying, yeah, it's like anxiety arises and she goes right to the hand, to the heart, right to the little one inside, right to that inner child, like, oh my dear, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, of course you feel this way. And still she's saying, but why does it not help? Why does that self-compassion not help? Because it's missing this piece of seeing that, and it's missing the piece of investigation of what's the mind up to? Oh, the mind is going, what if this, and what if that, and what if this? I'm allowing it, but I'm also feeding it. It feels like I'm allowing it because I'm compassionate, but actually I'm feeding it with a thinking, but I'm not seeing that right now. So both of these qualities, the allowing is metta, is the kindness. And so we often think of metta as like a separate practice, right? May I be happy, may I be peaceful, and that's separate than mindfulness. But from where I sit in my own experience, a true liberating moment of mindfulness really has to have this quality of kindness. And so to kind of zoom out at that whole picture, or those two situations, to be able to do any of that kind of an investigation, of even getting to the point of being able to ask the question, why is this not working? There has to be a lot of clarity in the mind. There has to be a lot of energy in the mind. So to be able to even do that kind of investigation, we really depend on samadhi. And we really, and so to define samadhi here, what I'm talking about is a gatheredness, a relative gatheredness of the mind, collectedness of the mind, a relative settling where we're able to see what's happening. And of course, samadhi is a spectrum, and many of you who are practitioners may have heard this. We won't go so much into different kinds of samadhi, but basically the idea is we're cultivating samadhi when we're returning and returning and returning to what we have the intention to pay attention to. So this could be coming back to the breath over and over, could be coming back to different objects, just whatever's arising, and it could be coming back to awareness itself. It doesn't matter what we're paying attention to, but it's the intention to pay attention, and coming back is what allows the mind to begin to settle. Any amount. We'll take any amount of settling. Any amount of settling, of calming of the mind that we can do will support our being able to see what's happening in this mind. So what supports this samadhi to arise? What supports this returning? And it said in the teachings that the Buddha said that happiness or gladdening is the proximate cause for this samadhi, or this calming of the mind, this centered collectedness, gatheredness. So I don't know what you think about that word happiness, but it's not like happiness, It's like just a brightness, a joy. And I'm not talking about, and the Buddha's not talking about the happiness, the joy, the gladness that comes from a great concert or a beautiful sunset, although that's included. That can really support samadhi, all of these joyful things in the world. But here it's this happiness that comes from this inner sense of goodness. And it can come in so many different ways. And I'd just like to highlight 3 right now. Let's say that generosity, ethical living, so living compassionately, living ethically in alignment with non-harming, and gratitude, I would say for me are 3 really, really trustworthy places to gladden the mind, that just naturally gladden the mind. I was just thinking about it as I was like getting ready this morning, and like, I don't know what to wear, and what will the talk, all the things the mind does as before giving a talk. Was it going to be good? Very stirred up, lots of thinking, old patterns of thought. And then this thought came in, we're going to sing. We're going to sing to Molly and Ron. I didn't know what we would do. I thought, let's sing. And then that moment of generosity brought this gladness. I got really excited about that. I was also scared about it, but I was like, let's get the guitar and tune it and play. And all of that generosity made all of that chatter, blah, 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 blah. Will it be good? What should I wear? Blah, 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 blah. It just left. I was just happy. It really was happiness. So this is what we're talking about. And we think about ethics. Oh, should I not rinse out the peanut butter jar? I don't recycle it. Like, that takes mental, how much time? I don't know about you, but how much time do you spend? Should I throw it in the trash? Should I wash it out? I don't want to wash it out. I'm bad for washing it out. It's like and I'm just talking about a little stupid thing, But it does it does create mental chatter, right? Then how about the bigger stuff? The ethical, the way we're using our sexuality, the way we are speaking about other people when they're not present. Just picture a conversation. Like, I know we've all been in those conversations where it's like the seductive gossip is arising, right? How much does that make the conversation just like, and it gets bigger, and that's mental chatter, right? And then you leave that conversation and it's still going. And then if you then wake up and realize that didn't feel good, then there's going to be a whole lot more mental chatter. Oh, I can't believe it. And the remorse and the regret and the shame. This creates a lot of thinking, a lot of obsessive, or just like the wanting of something. Some of us have this more than others when it comes to like, the stuff. Like going on Amazon, I want that, and I want that, and I want that. And just like this compulsion to put more and more and more into the cart or in a store or wherever, more, I want more. It creates a lot of activity in the mind. And then if we're doing all of those things, I'm just talking about a few of the realms of ethical, I didn't even touch on them all. We're busy thinking, how do I get that? And how do I tell them what I really think? And how do I tell them that they're wrong? And blah, blah. You get it. This is what our mind is filled with most of the time. Rooted in craving, rooted in a sense of not enoughness. And so these qualities of, and then gratitude, right? When we're feeling a sense of appreciation just for being alive, for whatever, for being able to see, hear, walk, eat, have the dharma, have friends. When gratitude is present, we're not wanting, usually, or it's less wanting. When gratitude or appreciation is really present in the heart, we're usually pretty happy, So just these 3 realms, cultivating generosity, commitment to non-harming, and looking for the good, really support the mind to settle, actually. And they're helping the world. The opposite of generosity is stinginess. I don't have enough. It creates a lot of stories. Why, all the stories we tell ourselves of why we shouldn't give or do or help. The opposite of gratitude is aversion. When we're not grateful, we're not liking. We're just looking for what's wrong. We're just missing what's right. This is rooted in it's, I am not enough, you're not enough, it is not enough. Want something different. So these are just flavors of craving, aversion and craving. And then with ethics, what's the opposite there? Or what's that rooted in? It's rooted in this delusion that what I do doesn't have an effect on other beings. And if we really are in a wise view, we understand that everything I do affects every other thing. And that's how it's working. Everything we do is affecting every other thing. And then it's also rooted in craving. My desires matter more than other beings' well-being. And I think we hear this a lot. I know I hear it a lot, like a collective awakening. I can't be free unless you're free, or we can't be free until all beings are free. And it sounds true. And it also can be hard to feel at times. And then it also can be like, well, then should I not enjoy my life, or should I not be cultivating? It's a big idea. And just wanted to share a little story, because it's one that it's an idea that I sit with a lot. What does that mean, and how am I living that, and what's my relationship to that idea? And I had this experience on that same paddleboarding camping trip, where the family who was camping next to us, their car battery died. And all I wanted to do was not be dealing with that. Anything but jumping a car. I mean, I wanted to be, this was my couple days off. I wanted to paddleboard and hike with my kid and hammock. And there they were, and I heard, and here's a moment when I heard them ask. Interestingly enough, this dad went to ask the other dad, side note, that was away from us, can you jump the car? I'm like, interesting that he didn't ask the person right next to him, right there, who was also a woman, interestingly enough, just putting that out there. But I did hear, I was aware of the conversation going on. Can you jump the car? This dad did not have the cables, and I happen to have cables because my car battery dies a lot. And I was just like, well, he's not asking me, so, there's a moment like, Then of course I was like, so this is just the first part of the story though. So he came back and I said, I have cables, and I also know how to jump a car really well because I do it all the time, And so it didn't work. We jumped it in all the different ways. And I was getting irritated because he was thinking I didn't know how to do it, and I really know how to do it because I really do it a lot. And so I was getting irritated and judgmental. And I had done everything I could do, And this campground has no cell phone service. So there was just a moment when I knew I can bring them to town. I can help. And I just really didn't want to. And I remember just going on this walk and just really having that feeling. I can't enjoy anything I want to do today, knowing that this is what they're dealing with. It was so strong. It was like, I even actually feel it right now as I'm sharing it. It was just like, I can't enjoy paddleboarding knowing that this family with a 1-year-old and an 8-year-old are just in this uncertainty, and maybe, I don't know, how are they going to ask everybody? I was like, I can do this. I know how to do this. I know how to be generous. I know how to help. But just sharing this, because it was really that such a maybe nothing story in terms of all of the violence and inequity happening in the world, but just my own personal being able to really feel that, yeah, I really can't be happy. And all of the thoughts and the stories that were proving the case, there was a lot of mental chatter going on. It was not a relaxing moment. Luckily, there was a payphone that it all worked out. They didn't need me. But I did go back before I knew that and offer, I'll take you into town whenever you want. And just the ease that it brought to say that and mean it, it was like, this relief from all of the contraction around not wanting to do it. It just made me happy, even though it wasn't my preference for what I wanted to do. So these simple things, being generous, helping, caring, these are all cultivations of their own, and they all lead to these deeper cultivations of metta and samadhi that really, really support the stilling of the mind, which really helps us see the subtlety of what's really going on in the mind. So this kind of wise speech, wise thinking, wise action stops the shame, the regret, the churning of the mind, the wanting, all of that, settles it down. That gives rise to this gladdening. That gladdening gives rise to this brightness, this joy. That joy matures into this settling, this sense of well-being. This is the samadhi. And this is just this nourishment. It's just a sense of nourishment. Now I'm resourced enough to look at impermanence. Now I'm resourced enough to look at these deeper teachings, which sometimes feel not so accessible, or I don't even care about them at all when the mind is going. And I was listening to a talk recently with one of my teachers, Rob Burbea, and he's a Buddhist scholar. I'm not a Buddhist scholar. I don't read I don't have all the suttas memorized or even know all the suttas. So I love teachers who do. And this is what he said, which I found really interesting. He said that the Buddha, when you look at the Pali Canon, which is the teachings of the early Buddha, there is more written about cultivation than there is about insight. That surprised me, hearing that. He said, if you look just word for word, teaching for teaching, the Buddha talked more about cultivating the wholesome qualities than he talked about looking at the Four Noble Truths, looking at dependent origination, looking at impermanence. Wow. Negativity bias. Yeah. And so that's been my experience being on the Dharma path. That there's always been, since I started practicing, more emphasis on letting go, being with things just as they are, knowing how they are, just this kind of bare attention, more emphasis put on that than put on cultivation. I'm guessing that's probably true for a lot of us here. That is kind of how many teachers say that is sort of how it rolled when it came from the East to the West. Just this emphasis on bare attention. And that's why many teachers have changed the emphasis and bringing more in self-compassion, love, samadhi. Something that I take heart in as a teacher and as a practitioner is that when the Buddha first woke up, and at that moment of awakening, he saw the Four Noble Truths. He saw that there's suffering. He saw the cause of the suffering. He saw what would free suffering. He saw that the potential to be free from suffering and the way to it. That was his awakening. He saw all of that. And that when people asked him to teach, he wouldn't. Right away, he said, I can't. It's too subtle. Seeing into the subtlety of change, the subtlety of the emptiness of the self, the subtlety of these movements of craving and aversion. He said, it's too subtle. People just won't get it. I find that really refreshing or reassuring. Like, it is really subtle. It is really subtle, a lot of this stuff. I mean, there are times we can see this very clearly, but really investigating the nature of what this thing called self is, it's quite subtle. the moments of change happening moment to moment in the mind. And so it does ask for this cultivation of samadhi, to take time, to take care, to do practices that really resource, that really help us calm, to not be so trying to figure everything out all the time, to really be emphasizing in our life and our practice that which resources us, that which nourishes us. So right there you see, these two wings. The necessity of the cultivation of calm, to have enough brightness in the mind, clarity to see what's going on. And the other, what I've been reflecting on is opening to the insight into impermanence can be really sad. Devastating. It's hard when we lose things, that piece of impermanence. I mean, it can be a celebration that things change, right? But the piece of impermanence that's dealing with loss and the body changing and the uncertainty of everything, it can be sad, it can be scary. Opening to the truth of the emptiness of the self, that can also be unnerving and scary. And sometimes these teachings on just like, let's look at suffering, let's look at the cause of suffering, it can just get kind of cold and just mechanical and maybe even just wah, 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 And so, so to have the nourishing qualities of love and compassion that can hold these truths, which at times are very intense. Very, very intense. And this morning I woke up so early, in the early mornings, and I was thinking of my dear Dharma friend whose husband was bit by a mosquito and has a very rare virus, and they will be making the decision whether to take him off the life support tomorrow. And that's would I tell her? It just happened so fast. Healthy person. I wouldn't tell her everything's changing. Like, that's not the medicine. And I can remember a couple years ago just talking with someone about their practice, and she was talking about kind of getting stuck in a mental pattern, just how to work with that. And we somehow started talking about anatta, not the self, how it is that the thinking feeds these mental patterns. And tears came. And what happened was she took it personally that the mind was feeding these mental patterns, like it was her fault. She was doing something wrong. She was making herself identified. She felt guilty for the mind doing that. It was like, okay, if that's the feeling that we have, then we're interpreting the teaching wrong. But what my learning was in that moment was she didn't need me to do that inquiry with her about all of that. She just needed love. This is hard. That is the cushion. And when we feel resourced and nourished and held in that we can be more ready in our own time, not anyone imposing that inquiry on us. I mean, that's what I'm seeing anyway. She needed that compassion before being able to really not take it personally, to see it wasn't her fault. Maybe you've heard this poem, Self-Compassion by James Cruz. It reminded me of my friend. My friend and I snickered the first time we heard the meditation teacher, a grown man, call himself honey, with a hand placed over his heart to illustrate how we too might become more gentle with ourselves and our runaway minds. It's been years since we sat with legs twisted on cushions, holding back our laughter. But today I found myself crouched on the floor again, not meditating exactly, just agreeing to be still, saying honey to myself each time I thought about my husband splayed on the couch with aching joints and fever from a tick bite. What if he never gets better? Or considered the threat of more wildfires, the possible collapse of the Gulf Stream. Then remembered that in a few more minutes I'd have to climb down to the cellar and empty the bucket I placed beneath the leaky pipe that can't be fixed until next week. How long do any of us really have before the body begins to break down and empty its mysteries into the air? Oh, honey, I said, for once without a trance of irony or blush of shame. The touch of my own hand on my chest like that of a stranger, oddly comforting in spite of the facts. Oh, honey. Oh, my dear. These truths are not easy. Not always. They can be so hard to open to. The change, all things changing, even my own self. This is not easy work. And that to me is what it sounds like in my own practice when I'm embodying these two wings. Oh, my dear, yeah, of course this is hard. Yeah. And every time I remember to slather on the love, the self-love, the self-compassion, I notice the mind gets really excited to do the deep dive again into what's happening. And I think of the Buddha, and in the teachings, the Buddha, it shares that the Buddha would sit for, I think the number is like 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours, something like that, in absorbed states of samadhi. So in these jhanas, he would sit. And inside these jhanas, these are these meditative absorptions that one can cultivate over time and that are filled with joy. They're filled with physical bliss, mental bliss. They're filled with metta. And even after he was awakened, he would spend a part of the day, every day, sitting in these states. And if you think of the life of the Buddha, he was an activist. He was dealing with the whole monastic sangha, everything that came up, and the lay community, all of the suffering that came up, all of the stress, all of the conflict. He was there. He was on it. He was teaching, working with people individually. Just what a compassionate teacher. But he would take these breaks for his own resourcing, filling up his own deep well of resource, of nourishment, deep, deep nourishment. And one image that I love from the teachings of jhana, there's one particular jhana that's just kind of filled with happiness, filled with this what's called sukha. And the Buddha gave this image of, it's like you're walking through the desert. And it can feel like that sometimes for us. It's like, we're just walking, there's no water. Where is it going to be the end of this stress, right? It can feel so dry, so hard, and coming to an oasis and just drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking. And then eventually keep walking. So these are these two wings, resourcing. And so they both support one another. When I'm resourced, my mind's more open to looking, more curious, it has more energy to investigate. And then when I do investigate and I see things clearly, see how it really is, this brings energy, this brings a sense of openness, then I just want to help. Then I just want to share. Then I just want to love, you know? And then when I love more, when I'm more compassionate, when I care more, then the deeper the joy for me, the deeper the samadhi. And then again, I'm investigating more, just deepening, 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 deepening. And so let's take some time right now and just feel in for a moment. Just taking a moment to feel your own body, your heart, your breath. And to just ask you this question. What is a truth about life that you are facing right now? What is some truth about the way things are that you're being asked to open to, whether you want to or not? What would support the opening to this truth? What would nourish you, your heart, your mind, to be able to hold this? Do you need patience, metta, compassion, calm, joy? What inner well of resource, of deep nourishment could you invite in to support opening to this truth that's in front of you right now? And so to weave in this thread of renewal, can you touch a moment of intention, of resolve? I will give this to myself, or I will invite this in at least. Can you renew resolve, renew commitment to supporting your journey with exactly what it is that you need of these wings right now? And just to close, inviting into the mind's eye this image of this great eagle soaring. And there's a moment when the bird doesn't have to flap the wings anymore and just rides the thermals. And so too, we can put in the work, and at some point, can you imagine that, just soaring? And so to close with a final dedication of merit, remembering that, yeah, we want our bird to soar. We do this work, we practice here together, not just for our own bird, but because it does ripple out. And may our practice here together today, our inquiry, our resourcing, may it radiate into all our beloveds around us today. And keep on radiating, that in some magical way our practice really be of benefit for this evolving consciousness on the planet. That may be living on a planet with beings who are free from violence, hatred, stress, greed, all the many causes of suffering on the earth right now. May we practice that all beings may be loved and have the resources to love, so that all beings can be free. Yeah, may it be so.